So when a Venom solo movie was first announced, I was pretty skeptical but still excited. Like a lot of other people, I was first exposed to the character after his brief appearance in Spider-Man 3. A lot of fans complained about his portrayal for a variety of reasons, but it was enough to make me a fan of the character. Just the idea of there being a dark version of Spider-Man was really cool to me. I've also played a lot of the Spider-Man games that came out during that time, so the fact that Venom was in a lot of them probably got me more attached to the character than the few scenes he got in Spider-Man 3. But anyway, the main point is that I was skeptical of this movie because of the absence of Spider-Man. The whole reason Venom was a cool villain was because of his relationship with Peter Parker and being a foil character to him. Even in Spider-Man 3, he was portrayed as a version of Peter that fell to villainy. He was a photographer at the Bugle, chasing a girl he loved, but when both of those things didn't work out, with great power, he resorted to revenge. In Venom 2018, however, Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock is much less of a bad guy because he has to be the protagonist this time. I'm going to go into more depth about his character later, but for now I want to talk about all the bad stuff in this movie because there's a lot of it. Firstly, I felt like this movie was really rushed once Eddie got his powers. The lead up to it felt slow and kind of boring, but once he finds Venom, the movie just moves at 100 miles per hour until the very end. It's fine because it makes a movie like this with such an undercooked story more enjoyable to sit through, but you don't get as much substance out of it. Once Venom is unleashed, he's basically unstoppable and even beats the villain after their first and only fight. There was never an all hope is lost moment that I think all superhero movies should have at this point. The entire plot was just really bare bones and disappointing. All the side characters were pretty bland stereotypes of characters you'd expect to be in a superhero movie. Michelle Williams plays the love interest and has a very underdeveloped relationship with Tom Hardy's character. Riz Ahmed plays an uninteresting villain that follows the same boring trend of giving the villain the same powers as the hero. Him and Eddie don't even interact that much during the second half of the movie. I think making him more comedic would have made him more memorable, to be honest, because that's what they did with Venom, and it worked. The idea to make Venom more humorous made for some really entertaining character interactions between him and Eddie. I loved watching these two talk to each other, and the whole thing is benefited by Tom Hardy's great acting. If they made Venom act more serious, I think it would have made for a more emotionally dissonant film, kind of like how Man of Steel sucked all the joy out of being Superman. Eddie Brock still lacks character development, but his scenes were probably the best thing about this movie. Not to mention, it led to a lot of really fun action scenes. It's hard to rate this movie because of how terribly flawed it is, but it's also because I really loved watching the chemistry between Venom and Tom Hardy. So with that being said, I'm going to give this movie a 5 out of 10, because I don't want to give too much credit to how lazily written the story and other characters were. It's kind of like a bowl of Lucky Charms with barely any marshmallows in it. It's pretty bland, but those marshmallows made it kinda worth it. Apparently this movie is making a shit ton of money at the box office, so we could actually be getting a sequel. I have really high hopes for a much improved follow-up, and judging by what's being foreshadowed in the mid-credit scene, I have pretty high expectations for what they could do with the next installment.